Hi, my name is Lauren Blackford. I'm the former president of the Sierra Club and current investment committee chair of the Sierra Club Foundation. I'm also honored to serve on Ceres President's Council. I'm excited to introduce our first World Series talk of this conference with Dr. Catherine Wilson. In her incredible book, All We Can Say, Catherine and her co-editor, Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, explore how female leaders in the climate movement utilize truth, courage, and solutions to catalyze change. I found the book to be an extraordinary look into how gender equality and the climate crisis are intrinsically linked and how female voices are vital agents of change in the climate movement. I love the book so much that I got 30 copies to send to friends, family, and colleagues. I encourage you to run out and get a copy of All We Can Save if you haven't already. It is now my great pleasure to turn things over to Catherine, who is also the co-founder of the All We Can Save project, co-host of A Matter of Degrees, and was named by Time as one of 15 women who will save the world. Please take it away, Catherine.
Thanks, Lauren, for that introduction. Eunice Newton Foote. It's a name you may not know, since she rarely gets the credit she's due. And rather appropriately, we're talking about her during Women's History Month. In 1856, Eunice Newton Foote theorized that changes in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere could affect the Earth's temperature. She arrived at this breakthrough idea through experimentation. With an air pump, 2 glass cylinders, and 4 thermometers, she tested the impact of carbonic acid gas, that was the term for carbon dioxide in her day, against common air. And when placed in the sun, she found that the cylinder with carbon dioxide trapped more heat and stayed hot longer. From this simple experiment, Foote connected the dots between carbon dioxide and planetary warming, and she did it 165 years ago. Circumstances affecting the heat of sun's rays. This is the paper she wrote documenting her research. It was presented in August 1856 at a meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and then published. And that was 3 years before the Irish physicist John Tyndall published his own more detailed work on heat-trapping gases. And that's the work that's typically credited as the foundation of climate science. Now you may be wondering, did Tyndall know about Foote's paper? Well, it's unclear, though he did publish research on color blindness in the very same issue of the American Journal of Science and Arts as Foote did. So in any case, we have to wonder if Eunice Newton Foote ever found herself remarking, as so many women have, dude, I literally just said that. Now here's the thing, Foote wasn't only a scientist. She was involved in the early movement for women's rights too. And as you can see here, her name appears on the list of signatories to the 1848 Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments, which was the manifesto created during the first Women's Rights Convention in the United States. Faithful to both science and equality, it seems that Eunice Newton Foote was a climate feminist. So why climate feminism? Well, I think it's exactly what we need today, having just closed out the hottest decade on record. And that's because our planetary crisis has never been gender neutral, not in its root causes, not in its impacts, and not in its solutions. So let's unpack that a bit. Climate change is a powerful threat multiplier. The Pentagon coined that term, focusing on the national security implications of the climate crisis. But its application is actually useful much more broadly because climate impacts make existing vulnerabilities and injustices of all different kinds worse. And that's especially true under conditions of poverty, where women and girls face greater risk of displacement or death from natural disasters. Early marriage and sex work, which are sometimes last resort survival strategies, those have been tied to droughts and floods. There is growing proof of the link between climate change, and gender-based violence, including sexual assault, domestic abuse, and forced prostitution. Tasks core to survival, like collecting water or wood or growing food, these are things that fall on female shoulders in many cultures. They are already challenging and time-consuming activities, and climate change can deepen the burden, and with it, struggles for health, education, financial security. These already present realities of our warming world mean that gender-responsive strategies for climate resilience and adaptation are absolutely critical. And it also means that gender justice will be an unattainable dream without bold climate action. So it's no surprise that all around the world, women and girls are making enormous contributions to the work of healing our planet, conducting research, cultivating solutions, creating campaign strategy, curating art exhibitions, crafting policy, charging forth in collective action, and more. But while women and girls are undeniably agents of change for the planet, we, remain underrepresented. That's true in executive leadership of big environmental organizations, in UN climate negotiations. It's true in media coverage of the crisis, in business, finance, technology, in the political and legal systems that create and uphold change. There is exclusion in virtually every climate-related decision-making space. And it's also well documented that girls and women who are leading on climate receive insufficient and inequitable financial backing, and still today, too little credit. The dominant public voices and empowered deciders on the climate crisis continue to be mostly white men. And that's not just a problem of bias or unfairness. Suppressing the participation of women and girls, half the world's brain power and change-making might, that sets us up for failure. Research actually shows that women have an edge when it comes to the planet. They convey greater scientific knowledge of climate change, and they act more readily on that knowledge. They have an aversion to taking on outsized risk or imposing risk on other people. That's actually something data indicates white men are particularly inclined to do. And this advantage or edge, it also carries into politics and policymaking. Female lawmakers more strongly support environmental laws and stricter laws. When parliaments have greater representation of women, they are more likely to ratify environmental treaties. And when women participate equally with men, climate policy interventions are more effective. When we look at a national level, higher political and social status for women actually correlates with lower carbon emissions and greater creation of protected land areas. So everywhere we turn, the outcomes are better. So what's the bottom line? We have to address the leadership crisis that is at the heart of the climate crisis. At present, far too many leaders across sectors continue to focus on profit, power, and prestige. And often that happens at the expense of most people and the entire planet. The climate crisis is, sure, it's most proximately caused by greenhouse gas emissions. But those emissions are the result of social, political, and economic systems that have been wildly skewed to benefit those who already have so much. The climate crisis is the result of unfettered economic growth, extractive capitalism, and the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a small few. These are the dynamics that beget emissions and have made them so very hard to rein in. Science has set before us a very clear task: to transform society this decade. As the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has put it, we need rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society. To address our climate emergency, we must rapidly and radically reshape the world we're living in. And if the task before us is transformation, that's going to take transformational leadership. We need an upwelling of feminine and feminist climate leadership, which is rooted in compassion and care, in collaboration, in community and creativity. And this kind of leadership is actually wide open to people of any gender. And I really believe that this leadership shift is where possibility lives. Possibility that we can turn away from the brink and move towards a life-giving future for everyone. So what does this leadership look like in practice? In the opening essay of the anthology, All We Can Save, my co-editor, Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, and I offer a 4-part framework for how we think about transformational climate leadership. The first quality is that there's a clear focus on making change rather than being in charge. This is about moving beyond ego, competition, control, these patriarchal dynamics that actually impede good work and run folks out of the movement or keep folks on the sidelines or playing small. Instead, we can stay focused on results and actually release some attachment to the commander's seat. This looks like joyful following, where wise leadership appears, joining instead of duplicating, giving one another credit, sharing resources, passing the mic, celebrating one another's successes. And it definitely looks like cultivating a practice of listening widely and deeply. Second, transformational leadership holds a commitment to responding to the climate crisis in ways that heal systemic injustices rather than deepening them. No more calculated sacrifice zones, no one casually left behind, no profiteering and calling it progress. This is about centering equity, inclusion, frontline and impacted communities. This is about recognizing that we can address near-term needs and long-term aims at the same time. And when we do that, it's more effective. Deeper root cause analysis shows us that climate change is a symptom. It's a symptom of our extractive economic system. So that means we're either multi-solving or we're not really solving at all. Third, transformational leadership embraces heart-centered and not just prefrontal cortex, head-centered approaches. This is about bringing our whole selves to the movement. Fear, grief, fiery courage, racking uncertainty, all of it. It's about doing the inner work that often precedes affecting change. The climate crisis has inescapable psychological and spiritual dimensions, and I think we ignore those things at our peril. What's so powerful, actually, about integrating head and heart, this is where scientific rigor and moral clarity meet. It's where analysis and empathy converge, where strategy and imagination come together. Our feelings are powerful sources of insight, and they're also potent fuel for action. Fourth, transformational leadership recognizes that building community is a requisite foundation for building a better world. This is about engaging in deeply relational, collaborative, and supportive ways, taking the necessary time, making the necessary space, investing in the relational web that sits between us. This is the kind of work that's really critical in any movement, any effort for social change. We cannot do this work alone. And oftentimes it's that sense of partnership and collaboration that can actually keep us going when the work is hard and it feels like the boulders rolling back down the mountain. Community holds so much wisdom. Individualism, it's always been a myth. It comes up short again and again on true solutions, purpose, and joy. To build a life-giving future, it's going to take the largest and strongest team possible. So what might Eunice Newton Foote have achieved if she had had John Tyndall's access to training and resources, the same platform and power? Better still, what if she had had a rich community of partners in good trouble? Sadly, we can only imagine. And while we cannot go back to the mid 1800s and rewrite that chapter, we can hear and heed and support climate feminists today. We can be climate feminists, regardless of our gender. Can you imagine the community that will heal the climate crisis? It will not be just you. It will not be technological salvation. It will be all of us. This is a beautiful piece of art by Madeline Jubilee Saito that appears in the book, All We Can Save, and I think sums up so much of the core of its message. In this most critical decade in human history, it's time to lead with eyes wide open, with broken open hearts, with linked arms, with ferocious love. Together, we can summon truth, courage, and solutions, the trifecta that can move us forward through the aching uncertainty and toward all that we can save. Onward, and thank you.